Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome back to Seriously Arabic, and we're continuing with verbs, and this time we'll look at mudari'. Now mudari' refers to both the present and the future tense in Arabic, and it can also express an action repeated multiple times. So you can use the mudari' tense to say, for example, he writes, or he is writing, or he will write. Now how do you differentiate the mudari' tense from al-madi? All verbs, they follow a certain scale, and we saw the conjugation table for al-madi already. Now, mudari, you can recognize it by its signs, and you can also figure out its sigha by looking at the i'rab of the verb. So the signs of the mudari tense are called alamat, and they appear at the beginning of the verb, and they are a hamza, a noon, a ya, and a ta. The ya is a sign of the third person and or masculine. The ta is a sign of feminine and or second person. The noon is used for we, and the hamza is used for I. Some people remember the alamat of mudari with the name Anita. Now we'll see how this combination they form the mudari verb. So we have one ya at the beginning of the word, and it indicates huwa. He does something. For example, yasjudu, he prostrates. Number 2, ya with ani. Ani is a sign for pair, and he times 2 would mean they. So this refers to huma, but masculine. For example, yasjudani, both of them prostrate. Ya with una. Una is for plural, so this is hum, and this is the jama mudhakkar ghaib sigha. For example, yasjuduna, which means they prostrate. If you see a ya and a noon with a fatha and the letter before it is sakin, then this is hunna. This particular noon is called noon niswa, and it is the noon that indicates feminine plural. This is not noon i'rabia, it's a different kind of noon. Ya is for the third person and na is for feminine. So yes, judna would mean those women prostrate. Let's move on to the ta. Ta at the beginning of a word can either be for hiya, she, because ta is a sign of feminine, he, or it can be singular second person, anta. So tasjudu can mean she prostrates or you prostrate. Ta with ani is antuma, masculine or feminine, or you can use it for huma, feminine this time. So tasjudani, for example, is both of you prostrate, or you can also translate to both of those women prostrate. Ta with una refers to the second person plural masculine, so this is antum. Tasjudna, you all are prostrating, this is what it means, or you all prostrate. Ta with the noon and the fatha, here the ta is a sign for second person and the noon is a sign for feminine plural, so this is antunna. And an example is tasjudna, which means you women prostrate. Lastly, the last combination with ta, and this is the only unique combination, it is ta with ina, which refers to anti. So tasjudina is you woman prostrate. As for hamza, it comes at the beginning to indicate ana. So asjudu means I prostrate. And the same is for the noon, which appears in front of the verb and it suggests nahnu. So nasjudu means we prostrate. And an important note is that these alamat, they can get a dhamma or they can get a fatha. But that depends on the scale of the verb. You don't get to choose what harka to put on. And you don't get to choose what harka any verb gets, to be honest, because it's all predetermined by scales. So here's the entire conjugation table. So you have huwa yaf'alu, huma yaf'alani, hum yaf'aluna, hiya taf'alu, huma taf'alani, hunna yaf'alna, anta taf'alu, antuma taf'alani, antum taf'aluna, anti taf'alina, antuma taf'alani, antunna taf'alna, ana af'alu, nahnu naf'alu. So as you can see, the taf'alani appears 3 times in the gardan. As for taf'alu, it appears twice. Now mudari is very different from al-madi because past tense verbs, they never change. They have fixed additions made to them. So you have, for example, fa'ala, fa'alata, fa'alna, and those stay the same and they never change. But the i'rab of the mudari verbs is actually flexible. which brings me to the three forms of mudari. So mudari has three versions: a default heavy version, which is this one that we see, and then he also has a second version, which is light, also known as mansub, and he also has a lightest version, also known as majzum. What makes the mudari mansub or majzum, we will learn that in the next session, and this is caused by some particles whose job is to make the mudari verb light or to make the mudari verb lightest. But we'll learn first how the mudari appears light, and that is the dhamma ending scales, they get a fatha. The noon i'rabia drops, but the noon niswa stays the same. And to make a mudari verb lightest or majzum, the dhamma ending scales, instead of getting a fatha, this time they get a jazam or a sakin. And the noon i'rab drops and the noon niswa stays the same. So if you see the light version of the gardan, which is this one, you have yaf'ala, taf'ala, taf'ala, and af'ala, and naf'ala. They all had a dhamma before, now they get a fatha. As for the rest of the sighas that had noon i'rabia, the noon got dropped off, so you have yaf'ala, taf'ala, taf'alu, yaf'alu, and taf'ali. But the noon niswa scales, hunna yaf'alna and antunna taf'alna, they stay the same, they don't change at all. And the lightest version of them is also very similar. Everything in fact is the same, except that the dhamma ending scale, this time they get a sakin. So you have yaf'al, taf'al, taf'al, af'al, and naf'al. The rest of the scales are the same as the light version, and even the nun niswa scales, they remain the same. Nun niswa never gets affected, it can never be dropped off. It is only the nun i'rabia that gets dropped off. Now we'll just do this exercise where we just plot the mudari verb in these verses of Surah Kahf. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا. One verb here is the word anzala, because it has a fatha at the end, which means that this is the huwa version, but it doesn't have an alamat of mudari because it's madi, so this is not going to be mudari. But you can say that this hamza could be alamat of mudari, but the reason why this is not alamat of mudari is because mudari by default gets a dhamma. So if it was the scale of af'alu, you would get a dhamma, whereas here it doesn't. And alladhi is not a harf, it's not any of those harf that would make a mansub or majzum. So this is not going to be fa'il mudari, this is fa'il al-madi. And if we continue, we have lam yaj'al. Yaj'al, it is a fa'il mudari because you have the alam of mudari here, but it is the lightest form of fa'il mudari because it has a sakin at the end. Instead of being yaj'alu, it's yaj'al. If we look at the second verse, فَقَيِّمًا لِيُنذِرَ بَأْسًا شَدِيدًا مِنْ لَدُنْهُ وَيُبَشِّرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ الَّذِينَ يَعْمَلُونَ الصَّالِحَاتِ أَنَّ لَهُمْ أَجْرًا حَسَنًا. Have لِيُنذِرَ. Yundira is fa'il mudari because the alamat here, and it is going to be the huwa version, and in fact also this is huwa. And it is the mansub version because it has a fatha due to this li over here, which we will learn more about tomorrow. And also yubashira is a fa'il mudari because of the alam of mudari, and this one as well is affected by a harf that makes it mansub. And if we continue, we have the word ya'maluna. This is the default mudari sigha. You have a ya, which is for ghaib sighas, and then you have this una, which makes it plural. So this is the hum version of the verb, and then the rest of it is not verbs. فَمَاكِثِينَ فِيهِ أَبَدًا. There is no verb in this one. And then if we look at وَيُنذِرَ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ وَلَدًا, the word yundira, again, this is an alamat of mudari, the ya. So this is the huwa version, and again, this is mansub. Then you have qalu. This follows the pattern of fa'alu. This is the past tense of qalu. So this is not fa'il al-mudari, this is fa'il al-madi. And then we have ittakhadha. That's also a fa'il al-madi, and you can tell that because he ends with a fatha and it doesn't have any alam of mudari. It does have this alif here, and it has an alif, not a hamza. And the sign of mudari is a hamza, not an alif. So this is fa'il al-madi, it's not fa'il al-mudari. And then the rest are isms, so they're not verbs. And we have the next one. The next verse is مَا لَهُمْ بِهِ مِنْ عِلْمٍ وَلَا لِآبَائِهِمْ كَبُرَتْ. كبرت is the scale of فعلت is the هي ماضي. This is not فعل المضارع. كلمة تخرج is فعل المضارع because of the ta. And when you have تخرج, it appears twice. Remember, this appears twice, so in the gardan. So this can be here or it can be anta. And in this case, it's going to be here because it's referring to words, which is feminine, so it's going to be here. In يقولون, this is فعل المضارع because it has a ya at the beginning, it has an una at the end, so this is the hum version. This is the جمع مذكر غائب الصيغة. فلعلك تدخل مشبهة بالفعل على آثاره. This is مضاف إليه, so this can't be verb because مضاف إليه are always اسم. إن لم يؤمنوا is فعل المضارع because it has an alam of مضارع and it has una. It used to have una but it got dropped, so this is the majzum version. It used to be يؤمنون, but something changed. So this is again the hum version. They did not believe. إنا جعلنا is also فعل, but this is فعل ماضي, it's not فعل مضارع. نبلوهم it's a فعل مضارع because you have the na here, which is for نحن, and then this word is actually منصوب because of this li over here. This is a فعل مضارع and there are no فعل مضارع in the rest of these verses. So that's all for today. Assalamu alaikum everyone.